Hello, and welcome to Making the Case for the Next Generation of Global Supply Chain Leadership. This is a special webcast brought to you by Caltech as part of our Making the Case webcast series. My name is Bob Trebilcock. I'm the Editorial Director of Supply Chain Management Review, and joining me today is Alan Dunn. Alan is the lead instructor at the Caltech Center for Technology and Management Education. We put this series together because we're all learning to navigate through the new normal. And while it might seem counterintuitive to spend money now, we believe that the companies that invest in new technologies and solutions today are going to have a competitive edge tomorrow as the economy recovers. And it's not just technology. The war for supply chain talent continues unabated. But far too many organizations lack an explicit plan to develop the supply chain leaders who are needed for the uncertain future we face. In a minute, Alan's going to make the case for an investment strategy to grow new supply chain leaders through executive development programs. These are programs designed to build capacity for navigating complexity, uncertainty, and continuous transformation. Just the kind of situation we face today. But first, a few quick housekeeping items. If you haven't done so already, I'd like to remind you that attendees are invited to download today's presentation. Just click on the resource icon on your screen. There won't be a Q&A today. However, you can feel free to submit questions as you listen to the webcast. We'll collect them and we'll forward them to Alan later. So Alan, without further ado, the microphone is yours.
Well, thank you, Bob. It's wonderful to be here today. I want to talk to everybody about the next generation of global supply chain leaders. You know, we all have a business to run, but we also have a business to grow. And to grow that business is going to require some talent. We at Caltech deal with talent all the time. The California Institute of Technology is a spectacular organization. It's an education organization, a university like no other universities. We have 38 Nobel Prize laureates, 58 National Science Medal Science recipients. We have an instructor-to-student ratio of about 3-to-1 and over 650 postdoctoral scholars working on cutting-edge, relevant research today. We are actually a school of people who think about cause and effect every single day. We think about that not just in terms of science, but in terms of how science applies to life. And we do that through our engineering disciplines. Indeed, many organizations, many of the top science and engineering organizations in the world have individuals who either lead them or in some cases those organizations were founded by Caltech graduates. We have enormous amount of IP that's been developed at Caltech, and we develop leading edge thought as well as engineered applications. So we're leaders in antimatter discoveries, molecular bonding discoveries, gravitational waves, and also the foundation of molecular biology. Indeed, DNA sequencing owes a lot to the work of a number of professors and researchers at Caltech. And so we've just done an enormous amount of work in the science, and so we thought about how do we apply that to supply chain, into the supply chain world. The realities of the global supply chain world is that there's not enough talent. The average age of a supply chain executive now is about 58 to 59 years of age. We have about 60 million baby boomers that are going to be leaving the marketplace, with about 40 million coming into the talent marketplace. That average age of 58 to 59 years of age of the supply chain executives has to be replaced by individuals who actually have supply chain degrees. Now, I need to remind you that those senior supply chain executives, not a one of them has a degree or graduated with a degree in supply chain management, because when they went to university, that degree did not exist. Today, there's over 300 universities in North America alone that offer degrees in supply chain knowledge. So we have a cadre of brilliant young people, the 24 to 34, 35-year age talent that has the latest technology, the latest ideas, the latest view of global economics and global commerce. they don't have the experience. They don't have the judgment. And as we like to say, good judgment usually comes from bad judgment, or at least some past bad judgments. And so we need to get them through that as quickly as we can. Now, there's about 900,000 jobs going unfilled in the supply chain world, and that's only at the manager and above world. If we take a look and go all the way down to production workers and to operations professionals and to warehousing and distribution and truck drivers, the number explodes from that. So we're just talking at that manager level and above. There's about 900,000 jobs worldwide that need to be filled. And so we have to do something about that. At Caltech, we sat down and thought about how can we compete, how can our clients, how can the companies we work with compete for talent in a world where there's a talent shortage. We know that all successful organizations require talent. We also know that we now compete for talent as much as we compete for customers. And great organizations, well, they just never stop thinking about how to acquire this talent, and particularly the supply chain where the shortage is great. So the question that we asked ourselves is how will our clients, how will these organizations address these talent shortages and these talent disparities between generations of employees? What will the next generation of supply chain talent look like? So we formulated a true kind of end-to-end global supply chain leadership experience that we can deliver in three different ways. We have what we refer to as the enterprise cohort. We have the open enrollment cohort that treks across the globe, and we also have a 100% e-learning cohort program. So we present our development programs in a cohort form, and we do that for a lot of reasons. We want the participants to develop bonds with one another. We want them to learn from one another. We want them to get the experiences, not just from the instructors, but from each other as well. In terms of the enterprise cohort, this is a wonderful program. This is about a 22-month program. Companies will give us 20 to 24 of their top young, high-potential individuals. These are typically multinational global organizations that go across the supply chain all the way from supplier through manufacturing and distribution, and even sometimes reverse distribution, the returns, if you will. And so from our perspective, with this 22-month program, we take 20 people from the same company from across the globe, and we have them come to Caltech for the first week where we teach them the very first class of the fundamental economic model of manufacturing and then go into materials management, because those are at the heart and soul of running a manufacturing and distribution enterprise. And then they go away for 4 months. They go back to their countries, back to their offices, back to their homes, and they think about what they've learned in that week at Caltech. By the way, that week at Caltech, we gave them the great Caltech experience. We love to take them to Jet Propulsion Labs, which is responsible, it's a NASA affiliate, responsible for all deep space probes. And there's a mission control. You've seen it in the movies. You've seen it on the news. And we take them there in order to use that as a metaphor for a later class on sales and operations planning, which is effectively mission control for a manufacturing enterprise. And we take them to other places in the school to show them innovative thinking and how our professors and how our students tend to look at the world differently. And how we'll take them, for example, to the Space Structures Lab to show them how you can take a football field-size photovoltaic array and put it in a box the size of a suitcase so you can launch it into outer space. And we get them to learn not just from the instructors in supply chain topics, but also from grad students and other instructors and professors at the university about how to look at problems differently. After the first week, they go away, as I said, for about 4 months. Then the second time we meet in a foreign country. And the third time, a foreign country. And there's 6 times we get together for a week long, and there's e-learning programs in between. And in the enterprise cohort, typically the countries we visit are where there's manufacturing or distribution of the client that engages us. So that enterprise cohort, the number one to the left of your screen, is the one that really takes 20 people from the same company. Some companies, however, can't send 20 people to a program. And it's not usually the money that it costs, it's usually the time away. Taking 20 people out of a single company is a big commitment on the company's part. And we understand that. So we will take individuals into what we refer to as open cohorts, where a company can send as few as one individual, and these are scheduled during the year. And these programs last also 22 months. And the only difference is that of the 20 participants, they could be from up to 20 different companies, which is in itself interesting because that does provide different perspectives that one would not probably get in the enterprise cohorts. The bonding, however, is a little bit less, but they still create lifelong bonds with people outside of their companies that can help them with problems in the future. We also, in the open cohort, we take them around the world. So again, we meet 6 times with e-learning programs in between. Those 6 one-week-long programs that have courses in those weeks start off at Pasadena at the Caltech campus. The second time we meet in Germany, and the reason we meet in Germany is so we can take them on a tour of a large German auto manufacturer. Then the third time we meet, we go to China, although that might be adjusted here in the future. We go to China mainly to take them to a large contract Chinese manufacturer. The fourth time we get together, I should say, we actually take them to Brazil, and eventually we take them to South Africa, and then we end up in Sydney, Australia. We end up on every major continent. The reason for that is if you are going to be a global supply chain leader, you need to have a sense of the global cultures, the global organizations, and the global ways of doing business. This is, we think, a very important part of both the open cohort and the enterprise cohort. Now, we started working on a pure 100% e-learning program, probably about a year ago. We've now accelerated that because of the COVID-19 pandemic, and we now have the ability to do the entire program, less a few of the behavioral programs that just cannot be done via e-learning. But we do have some very innovative approaches to e-learning. It's an 18-month program. It still deals with all the same technical programs, and on top of that, we have a lot of dinner programs. So, for example, there's e-learning dinners where we get together and people actually are expected to have dinner. And one of them, and we do this 6 times, one of the guest speakers is always a wisdom speaker. That's a presenter, that's a live streamed program, and that's a presenter who talks about something that can only come from experience and judgment. You might understand why these tend to be older executives. They tend to be senior in their companies. They tend to be very successful, and they tend to have all the Band-Aids from all the mistakes that they've made. We also have a dinner speaker that talks about advanced technologies. One will talk about the Internet of Things. Another one will talk about robotics. Another one will talk about sustainability, etc. We also do plant tours. This is one of the most exciting and interesting approaches to our 100% e-learning open enrollment program. And then we actually have live streamed plant tours from factories around the world. And so people will have a dinner, will watch, and it'll be live, fully connected between the instructor, the tour guide, and all of the participants. So we can actually talk about what we see. What we do is we send a moderator and a camera person out to the factory with the general manager, walk through the factory. It's probably not as good as being there, but it's the next best thing, and it's actually done very well. So we're very excited about that. In summary, the enterprise cohort is a single company. The open cohort is multiple companies participating and traveling, and the open online cohort is fully 100% e-learning. These programs are targeted at organizations of scale, or large organizations that really need to accelerate their comprehensive learning and readiness. And so typically we'll see them for using and targeting complex multinational organizations who really need to accelerate that experience and really create that next generation of leadership. This is really important because somehow companies need to kickstart those 20 to 24 to 34-year-olds and kickstart their experience and move them forward and accelerate the development of experience and judgment. And that's why a lot of the programs are simulation-based. A good number of the e-learning programs in all three types of cohorts are simulation. We have a world-class sales and operations planning simulation, inventory management simulation, strategy formulation. We have a wonderful production planning and scheduling simulation, a distribution network simulation program. These are all designed to accelerate experience in a simulated sort of an environment. So we're very pleased with those, and it does tend to move individuals forward in their careers a lot faster. So we've been at this for nearly 12 years now. I'm happy to say that most of the cohorts that we've instructed, most of the people in those cohorts have been promoted. Interestingly enough, while some people will leave their companies after these programs, it's very, very few. Most of them stay with the programs and stay with the companies. We believe because companies that offer these kinds of programs get the additional benefit of them being a retention program. Companies that will spend this kind of money and this kind of time developing people usually are not the ones to allow the good ones to get away. So the delivery approaches that we talked about are basically the enterprise cohorts and these open enrollment cohorts. One of the things I did not mention is that in the enterprise cohort, we have over 90 courses, and we can sit down and configure with your people the exact program that you need. So if you don't have any distribution issues, we might not have a distribution network planning or a distribution requirements planning program. If you're a manufacturer of discrete products done in batch production, then we won't have process manufacturing courses. In other words, we have such a large catalog of supply chain courses, of end-to-end supply chain courses, that we don't need to force on the enterprise cohorts a set of courses that we believe are important. Those courses can, in fact, be selected and configured. We actually have a document referred to as the workshop configurator that we do that with. Now, flip all the way over to the e-learning programs. 80% of those are on demand, so the people can watch them, the participants can watch them, view them, take the quizzes, the exams, take them as they need to, but there is a pace that's required that they are to stay with. But then we have 20% that are live streamed. So while they don't have to travel, there is a discipline required in terms of the pace at which they work and the attendance at most of the, if not all of the mandatory live streaming programs. Our unique learning model is designed from practitioners. So when you take a look, we start every program with the fundamental economic model of manufacturing. Everything we do through the whole 18 months or 22 months, depending upon the format, everything we do goes back to asking the question, how will what you just learned change the economics of your business? We do that for safety classes. We do that for planning classes. We do that for leadership classes. We do that for technical production scheduling classes and forecasting and demand management classes. Every program goes back to its impact on the economics. We also have this layered approach that's a very interesting layered approach, and that we look at every function in a manufacturing organization, every function in an end-to-end supply chain, and we look at what are the technical, the organizational, the cultural, and the behavioral impediments. The technical being hardware, software, tools, things that money and time and innovation can buy. The organizational elements of a function are the issues around work content, workflow, job flow, management of work resources. The cultural is about beliefs and value systems that need to exist for work to be done properly. And the behavioral is really about how to change the fundamental behaviors of human beings to get them to go in a common direction. Indeed, in our performance metrics course, we introduced the idea that the only reason we measure, the only reason anybody should measure anything outside of compliance requirements, the only reason we should measure, the only reason we need metrics is to shape behavior. We want our courses to give the participants the tools to know how to shape behaviors of others, because we believe in companies today there is no such thing as individual accomplishment. It's group, it's team accomplishment. Knowing technically what to do, but being emotionally, being culturally, being organizationally or behaviorally deficient will not get it done and will not lead to a competitive advantage. So we start with this fundamental economic model, and then we have foundational classes, the things that everybody should know: production planning, production scheduling, forecasting, cost accounting, those sort of topics. And then we move up into some organizational. We move up into some behavioral classes. We have advanced classes. We have one of the most exciting advanced classes on design for product line profitability. It's a 3-day role-playing class that we actually tear products apart and put them back together. We do design for manufacturing in reverse. We also have C-suite sort of topics like strategy planning, and we have a very interesting ERP logic class, which is really designed as an executive level class to teach or to instruct what needs to be done before one implements or one changes their global ERP system or consolidates the ERP systems. And so that's an executive level program that's been very well received and always gets people thinking differently. And then, of course, we have these things called what we call interface workshops, and these are 4-hour workshops. For example, the interface of supply chain and public relations. Who would think there's an interface there? But there actually is. Because supply chain builds a relationship with suppliers and relationships with customers that can very easily end up in the PR world, good or bad. And so we actually have some those are all e-learning programs, by the way. And in the middle of the top of that blue diamond on there, you'll see that is really about simulation courses. This is one of our great strengths, the ability to deliver e-learning simulation courses where we take the class of 20, we break it up into 4 teams of 5, and they actually compete by running simulated production operation or running a simulated distribution network or transportation network. Everybody really likes those. Then we have, of course, the final program, which ties everything together, and there's a multitude of ways of us doing that. One is through projects. So the open cohort enterprise version, we typically have projects that are real projects for the company that actually generate value. And 100% of the time that we've delivered an enterprise cohort, the cohort is at the end of the day been free because the projects that the people develop, the benefits more than make up for the expenditures the company spent on the program. And so projects tend to go with the enterprise cohort. The open cohort, we tend to have some projects in there, and we have a final course that ties everything together for the e-learning cohort. So as I indicated before, there's over 90 selectable courses in 10 knowledge domains across 11 disciplines. And you can see a few of the titles of courses listed there. But for each of those courses, we also break it down into sub-elements. And so, for example, in the supply chain management topics, we have courses in sourcing, planning, converting, distributing, returning, inventory management, enabling supply chain economics, and managing and leading supply chains. And that same level of breakouts, not the same ones, but the same level, the same idea of breakouts will exist for all the other courses that you see, or the disciplines, topic disciplines you see listed there. So we have not just great depth, but we have spectacular breadth of subjects. We have quite a number of educators that help us out. So I'm the lead instructor and one of the developers of the program. We have Dr. Hefner, who works at the Center for Technology and Management Education and is probably one of the best instructors in systems engineering, project management, agile design, and all the other things that ultimately feed into manufacturing. Maria Bazia, who teaches a lot of the marketing and strategy programs. You won't find a better person to teach these topics than her. Faria Burry is our strategist who thinks about different ways of running the business, kind of a combination of a strategist, an HR professional, a talent manager, and a futurist. Anna Savshasky is one of the finest CEOs, past and retired CEOs, and past and retired supply chain executives you'll ever meet, having worked in all over the world and led some very, very large operations. And then Joseph Fields, we refer to him as Pepe Fields, has an enormous background in the electronics industry, as well as consumer products, as well as industrial. And so these are our primary instructors. We have numerous other instructors for some of the programs as well, and we're always, of course, looking for even more as we do more of these cohorts. Now, Caltech itself, since 1984, has teamed with technology-driven organizations, and indeed, most of our clients have been technology-driven organizations. But here's a little secret. There is no such thing anymore as a non-technology organization. To survive in any kind of manufacturing or distribution or supply chain related industry, you are going to use technology. The picture you see there is from a tour of our robot lab. This happens to be a biped where we show people where the future of robotics is going, not just in terms of industrial pick and place and controlled path robots that you see in industry today, but the future of bipeds and quadrupeds in industry, not just in theory, but also in industry. As I indicated earlier, a lot of the programs are very, very engaging. So if you'll see the top, there's our picture of mission control. We have this wonderful project you see with the red circle on the ground, and that is our radioactive popcorn project where everybody gets together and they have to execute a series of very critical steps, and it teaches teamwork, it teaches project management, it teaches preparation, it teaches discipline, it teaches attention to detail, and we use that for a number of the programs. We also take people all over the campus as well as all over the world, teach them a lot about what's going on. And indeed, the campus itself is beautiful. You won't find another 128 acres that's prettier than the Caltech campus, particularly in the spring and the fall time. And so we bring them to the campus at least for the first week of these programs, and we give them the true Caltech experience. It could be taking them to the robotic lab, taking them to the artificial energy lab, taking them to the Einstein Papers research. Einstein taught at Caltech many years ago for a period in his life. We take them to a number of the labs and the drone lab and others as well. And then we eat at the wonderful faculty lounge or faculty club when we are there. The Caltech experience is really, really wonderful. You know, every year about 4,000 to 8,000 young people apply to become undergraduate freshmen at Caltech, and about 200 of them are accepted. It's a very, very prestigious club to be a Caltech student and to be a Caltech alum. All of our graduates at Caltech end up in the biggest companies, the most technologically advanced companies, or the most innovative and interesting startups that you would ever see. Caltech grads are in demand, and it's because of that focus on how to engineer solutions, not just how to accept current thinking, but how to engineer new solutions. And we've taken that into our global supply chain program. So that's all I have for today. Bob, I'd like to thank you for allowing me to talk to everybody today, and so back to you, Bob.
Well, thank you, Alan, and thank you for making the case for executive education. Just a reminder that if you submitted a question, we'll forward it to Alan later. And I'd just like to add, executive education is always one of the more popular topics on SCMR.com. So I know there's a lot of interest in the supply chain community on this topic, and I, for one, found it pretty interesting. And with that, I want to thank all of our audience for attending today and for Supply Chain Management Review. Alan Dunn and Caltech. I'm Bob Trebilcock.